All right, and good day, and welcome to Predators Proclivity, where we look at data from the season, not just the regular season, but the playoffs now. We look at data from the season for the NHL Nashville Predators, and we make comments upon it. Yes, talk. That's what I do. I talk a lot. Nobody that knows me would guess I talk this much. I'm your host, Preston Proctor. Okie dokie. So we are in the Stanley Cup Playoffs. Very exciting. Great win for the Preds last night. 4-1. 4-1. Again, a very tough game. A little personal peeve of mine. It has always bothered me. Okay, Playoff Central. This is the Preds part, but here we go. Not talking about the Preds. It has always bothered me that when the Kings would get into the playoffs, that their opponents' broadcasting crew would always be the ones calling the game, even if they were in L.A. That Jim and Bob would have to have their own podcast, their own things. And we got we actually bought the DVD where the Kings won the 2012 Stanley Cup, and you get the game call by Bob and by Jim and Bob. And we haven't listened to it yet. I'm sure at some point we will. We just love those guys. But instead of getting your announcers, which is fine. I mean, if you're playing in, Colorado or whatever, and it's on NHL.com, then the announcers probably from the local market, which is fine, except when they go to L.A., they don't use the L.A. announcers. Always bothered me. I guess it's a contractual thing. I don't understand and don't really know. It's just something that annoys me. When they obviously can get the other announcers, why can't they get the Kings announcers? So, that being the case, it kind of felt like we were listening to the Vancouver announcers last night, and it felt like being in Vancouver. And I say that from this perspective. We used to live in Seattle, and we would go up to Vancouver to watch the Kings play, and preferably to see the Canucks lose. Interesting going through the border with our Kings gear on. I would say the Canadian the customs agents for Canada, we never ran across a Vancouver fan. Kind of a unique experience. I've never been to Calgary. I would love to go see a game in Calgary, see a game in Edmonton. I think it'd just be amazing. Maybe Ottawa, Montreal would be similar. We have been to Toronto. We saw a game in Toronto, just fabulous. The fans are amazing. Whenever we've run into fans, I'm not sure we've run into that many fans from Edmonton, but Calgary's fans we just love hanging out with Calgary fans. What we don't like, and is a shared thing seems to be amongst all the Canadian teams, the ones we run into anyway, is that nobody likes Vancouver. But the thing that made the experience just so weird. Okay. Now, I have a little bit of experience seeing games in different arenas. I've been to St. Louis. We've been to Arizona. Arizona that will no longer have a team next year, if you guys haven't heard. Came out this week. Been discussions for a long time. The team moving. The team is not moving, per se. The Coyotes are staying in Arizona in case the current owner ever wants to restart the team. Apparently, he's bought a bunch of land and is going to build an amazing, amazing complex that could host another NHL team. But the current franchise for the NHL is moving to Salt Lake City. So the Coyotes are not moving, but the franchise is moving. And once they get a stadium built in the greater Phoenix area that the current Coyotes owner is building, the NHL will consider giving them a new franchise. So the Coyotes moving to Salt Lake City. Anyway, we've been to Arizona, not when they played at the college arena, but the real arena, Gila, whatever. I don't remember what it's called, but we've been to Colorado, been to Vancouver, went to Madison Square Garden. Talk about a small venue, but I have. Interestingly enough, thanks for listening to Predators Proclivity when we're not talking about the Predators. I'm going to get around to that. I think it helps if you understand my perspective. I still have a New York Rangers hat that I bought when I was when I saw a game at Madison Square Garden. So I have something to wear if Jonathan Quick winds up in the Stanley Cup Finals, not playing the Predators. Not playing the Predators. If they wind up playing the Kings, it can be a tough one. But anyway, I digress quite a bit. So anyway, I've been to other stadiums and seen games. The thing that was unique about going to Vancouver is that when their team commits a penalty, they don't replay it on the overhead. They don't replay it on the overhead when their team commits a penalty. When the other team commits a penalty, all the time. I mean, they show it, they reshow it, but they don't show for the audience in the stadium. At least they didn't the handful of times we went to see a game up there. They do not show the audience the penalty committed by the Canucks. Ergo, the fans think no penalty was created. They think it's all bias on the part of the refs in the NHL. In fact, one of the first times we were there, this guy looked at us and he goes, "Oh, yes, of course. The NHL likes to give penalties to help the weaker teams." Yeah, okay. Jerk status authorized. Okay. He was serious. But they don't think the Canucks have ever committed a penalty, which is similar to, was it Brian Haywood, the guy who does or used to do the announcing for the Anaheim Ducks, and was really annoying when he's calling the Kings games in the playoffs, not even playing Anaheim, but he's just, they bring him out and they show him up and he hates the Kings and the Kings can't do anything right. But in his mind, watching the telecast when the Kings would play Anaheim's never committed a penalty in the entire history of the franchise. It's all crap. He doesn't agree with any of it. That wasn't a penalty. Of course, the other team's committing penalties left and right that's not getting called. One of the worst announcers ever. Hate the guy. Anyway, there was what was that guy's name? There was an announcer for the Kings, and he was one of those sideline announcers. But for a while, he was doing Kings games, and then he was also doing the Anaheim games. And we ran into him at the JW Marriott. I don't know if they still do it, but the radio crew for the Kings, after the game, they go over to the JW Marriott down in the lounge, and they do the post-game recap, which is a lot of fun. If you're going to a Kings game, the JW Marriott is an amazing place to stay because it's right next to the stadium, crypto whatever arena, and great place to stay. Extremely convenient for going to Kings games. But they also do the post-game show from there. So this guy was there, Andy or whatever, and he just happened to be chit-chatting with him, and said something or whatnot. And he said, "Yeah, a lot of the fans don't like me." And I looked at him and said, "Well, maybe if you stopped calling Anaheim games." And he looked at me and goes, "I haven't done that in a long time. When was the last time I did that?" I'm like, "Dude, I don't know. I just know you've done Anaheim games." And ergo, you're not necessarily one of my favorite people. But anyway, he was really upset about that. Anyway, so one of our brief experiences. But the announcers last night, there were these fake. I'm going to call them fake because they didn't bother to show the replay. Half the time, the announcers didn't even bother to tell you who had committed the penalty. The too many men penalty that was not shown on TV, they didn't bother to go back and talk about it. I wasn't sure who was in the penalty box. Wasn't sure how it had happened. And I know the too many men on the ice penalty is something. Thank you, Jim Fox, for explaining all this stuff to me for so long when I was in Los Angeles, because one of the things I loved about Jim and Bob as well, but Bob is retired, was the explanation of the rules and what the penalties were, and which I think is so vital. And they never stop. The Kings have been in LA for 50 years. Jim explains it on every telecast because you got to realize new people are showing up all the time. And the more they understand the game and the more that they understand the rules, the more informed they are, the better they can enjoy the game. I get not everybody understands the rules. I was a scorekeeper. I've been a fan for a long time. So, I've a little bit more insight. I've been, a big fan of when Jim explains the rules, paying attention. I know the rules change from year to year, so I'm a little behind because the Preds announcers don't do a bit of that. And I haven't been watching a Kings game. So I think it just leads to a more educated viewing audience. And just ask my wife. We sit there in the stadiums, and it's not just, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. Hockey fans, they come to the games. They want to enjoy the game, whatever. That's fine. What I hate, somebody behind me is screaming it wasn't a penalty. I'm like, yeah, it was. Yeah. That guy, he did that. That was wrong. That was a penalty. Now, and I'm more than willing to call penalties on my own team. Hey, that's fine. You're out there playing, somebody does something, not everything gets caught, right? That's the thing. Not everything gets caught. But if it does get caught, hey, it got caught. And I had no idea about that too many men. But the thing of it is, it's such a subjective call at some point, too, because people are coming on and off the ice all the time, right? So you can't have six skaters. The goaltender is not considered to be a skater. Somebody claimed once who had been a goaltender, the goaltenders are the best skaters on the team. And I don't know. Let's just say I doubt that. I'm not saying they aren't good skaters. I'm just saying there may not be the best skaters on the team. Okay? That's all I'm saying. But six skaters. You can't have six skaters on there. And if you're within about 5 feet of the boards coming off the ice, the next player can come on the ice. So you can have six people on the ice for, like about a second or more as the guy comes over to the boards and then climbs over and gets in, right? The other guy comes out on the ice, starts skating away. What they're not supposed to do, and sometimes this is what gets into trouble, and something that's kind of not all teams do. You're not always in the position to do this, but it's fun that when somebody's doing a line change to pass the puck over near the boards, and then wait for one of the guys that's going off or coming on to play the puck. And in that case, hey, too many men on the ice. So if you've got six guys on the ice and one of the persons playing the puck is either the guy going off or the guy coming on, well, that's too many men. It doesn't care how close you are to the bench or how many feet are on the ice. That's too many people, right? So as long as those two guys are within like 5-ish feet, now, granted, the refs are wherever they are trying to judge this, right? The refs are the ones that call the penalties. The linesmen do not call the penalties. The linesman is the one that's right there by the board, by the door. But he does not call penalties. He can be consulted, but he doesn't call the penalties. Only the guys with the orange bands. And they're nowhere near, generally, the player's bench. during the course of play. So they are estimating how close these guys are. I don't know where the refs were last night. I don't know, where the players were. All I'm saying is there's a lot of subjectivity, especially like if, say, somebody comes on the ice and the player going off isn't that close. Or if the guy comes on the ice and he's skating a long ways away and that guy's still on the ice, the main thing is if they're playing the puck, if they're engaged in the play, then it's definitely a penalty. Otherwise, it gets a little subjective. So they didn't replay that, so I have no idea. But it seemed really bogus to me. And then I heard later on that the Preds were arguing that the Canucks should have gotten a 6 men on the ice. And so I'm thinking it was probably a scenario similar. Now, again, didn't see that because you don't get to see everything on the TV telecast like you do if you're actually in the arena. So can't comment on any of that. I did see some holding call that happened, I think also in the first period. Oh my gosh, how many penalties did they have to call on the Preds in the first period? Holy cow. Penalty, 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 penalty. I even called it. One penalty was ending, and I said, Amy, they're just going to call another penalty on the Preds. And that's when the too many men on the ice penalty came on. Now, the puck was all the way down behind the Vancouver goaltender when they called too many men on the ice. So, I don't know. I'm saying I doubt it. But this hold that they called was not a hold. The guy, I watched the entire play 3 times. Nobody had a hold on anybody. Now, one guy swung his stick around trying to hit the puck. And so if you swing your puck around, your stick around, and you catch the puck, and then say you hit him in the hands or whatnot. Well, I mean, you got the puck, so it's a legal play. It's kind of like in basketball. If you get the ball and your follow through, you happen to kind of hit somebody in the hand or face, then it's not a penalty. It's an unfortunate circumstance. Which I guess just being talking about the rules today. Hello, this is Predators Proclivity. It's Steven rant time. But a lot of times people will call a high stick, or fans think that there's a high stick. If somebody's shooting the puck or making a pass, and they make a pass and there's a follow through motion on that, they wind up hitting somebody. That's not a penalty. Usually, sometimes they can call it to be a penalty. But the thing is, if they're making a shot and their follow through happens to hit somebody, that's not a penalty. It's not a penalty. People scream all the time, "Oh, hey, that's a high stick." No, it's not. It's not. So anyway, the Vancouver. Back to Vancouver in the game last night. There seemed to be some shadow penalties called, and the broadcast crew wasn't talking about that, and they really seemed to. There was one place where the Preds player made an amazing play of stealing the puck, and all they had, and then it wound up getting shot back down behind the goaltender, and all they said, "Oh yeah, now the puck is back on this end." Didn't even mention the fact. Good play, good stick handling by whatever player it was to steal the puck. And clear the zone. Good play. And then there was another time where the Preds player passed it to the Canuck player, and they go, "Oh, what a great steal!" No, the guy passed him the puck. I mean, I could have caught. I could have done that. I mean, but no. So anyway, I think it was. I thought I had heard these announcers before. And maybe I hadn't, but they definitely seemed to have a Vancouver slight during the play calling, and during the telecast. They wouldn't replay all the different penalties. I thought it was I didn't care for it. Let's just say, but anyway, big win. Hey, none of that was on. 19 minutes in, I haven't done anything that was on my list. But great win for the Preds. Okay, so The Stanley Cup. The Stanley Cup. Okay. So we're in the first 4 games of all of the matchups. The first 4 games are 2 at home for the high seed and 2 at home for the lower seed. So Vancouver is coming here for Friday night. The Rangers and Washington have also played 2 games. The Rangers are up 2-0. They play again Friday. Florida, Tampa Bay. Florida has also won both of the games. They play again on Thursday. Carolina and the Islanders. Carolina is up 2-0. They play again Thursday. Boston and Toronto are tied at 1-1 and play their first game in Toronto tonight. And that's the Eastern Conference wrap-up. So 3 of those matchups are 2-0, and the Boston-Toronto, the 4 versus 5, is Atlantic 2 and Atlantic 3 are 1-1. Over in the Western Conference, Dallas-Vegas is tonight. Their second game, Vegas won the first game. The only visiting team to win the first game in the first round of the Stanley Cup Playoffs. Good for Vegas. Pull in for Dallas in that matchup. And then Vancouver, Nashville, 1-1. They play again on Friday, the first game in Nashville. Winnipeg, Colorado. 1-1. Colorado won last night. Their next game is on Friday. And then Edmonton, LA is tonight. Edmonton is 1-0, and they will play again on Friday. So, yeah, I had the Rangers, I think, in 5. The Rangers are up 2-0. I had the Florida in 7, and Florida's up 2-0, having won both games at home. I figured the Islanders were winning 6, but Carolina is up 2-0, and in the last game, Carolina was down 3-0 and came back and won 5-3. And the Bruins Maple Leafs split 5-3 and 2-3, so the 1-1. And let's see, the Stars and Knights. I had the Stars in 5 or 6. I have to say or 6 now because the Knights won the first game. You got to play them all. And now the Canucks, Preds are also 1-1. I had I couldn't decide Canucks in 6, Predators in 7. How about the Predators in 5? No? Yeah, maybe? No? Okay. Jets Avalanche, they're 1-1. I had this as a Jets sweep, so I am already wrong in that one. I thought 4 or 5, but I just said, well, what the heck. The Jets have played Colorado really well this season, so let's just pick the Jets to sweep. I figure one of these series is going to be a sweep. Usually, you can count on a sweep somewhere in the playoffs. And then the Kings Oilers. There I am again. Oilers. I guess also the Kings in 7, Oilers in 6, and the Oilers are up 1-0 and playing tonight. All right. So Tuesday night's game for the Preds last night. It was the first time this season, 4 previous games, 3 in the regular season, that the Predators won. That's the most important stat there. They scored more than 2 goals. They only needed 2 goals to win last night because Vancouver only scored 1, but they scored 4. So they scored more than 2. They had only scored 2 in the 4 previous games. This was the first time that they had won the second period. Previously, in all the matchups, they had lost the second period, and then they tied on Sunday. This was the first time they won the second period. Those of you listening know that the second, I call my spreadsheet the second period strife because I think the Predators have a problem being competitive in the second period. Not last night. They won that. And then first time they've won the third period. Previously, they had 2 losses and 2 ties. The third period, the 2 losses, not overtime losses, but the 2 losses were the other two games in Vancouver. So the two two ties. So not overtime losses, but they had 2 losses and 2 ties. And in Vancouver, it was 2 losses previously in the regular season. So there you go. Play, a lot better. They won all 3 periods last night. Now, interestingly enough, against Vancouver, they have won the first period in every game. So all 4 games, 5 games, 3 in the regular season, 2 in the playoffs, they've won the first period. And yet they're 1-3. Winning the first period is great, but the game goes on. Overall, what they did last night, they won all 3 periods. They got the first goal. In general, if you win 2 periods, you win the game. There's only been one circumstance where the Preds lost 2 periods and won the game, but they also won 2 periods. So win 2 periods, win the game, unless the one case that proves the rule, right? You win all 3 periods. I think I can safely say that you're going to win the game. That if you outscore your opponent in all 3 periods of a 3-period game, it's hard to lose. It's really, really, really hard to lose. I'm not sure it's possible. But so last night they won all 3 periods. That was great. Even given that first period, whatever was going on in the first period, with penalty after penalty after penalty after penalty, the Preds had to play through it. So good for them. When they get the first goal in the first period, they're 16-5-1. So yeah, 16-5-1. When they win the first, 13-3-1. If they only win 1 period, they're 7-8. So that's the loser. If they only lose 1 period, 9-2, tie 1 period, 11-6. Okay. So Friday night is the first home game. And so what can we remember, or what can we think about from the Preds playing at home and the Preds playing Vancouver? So against Vancouver this season at home, they have not won a period at all. Now, granted, two games, only 2 games, so not huge. And both games, let's remember, were back in the first half of the season. The first 2 games were within the same week. They played one here, then one in Vancouver, and then 2 months later, in the middle of December, they played another game here. It was a long time ago. Long time ago, especially in hockey season years. Is that a thing? Okay, but they've not won any of the period. They tied the 3rd period in both games here, and they have never had the lead. Both the games played in the first half of the season. So the Preds have been playing a lot better after that. So that's the games against Vancouver this year. Overall, at home this season, the Preds have been outscored in the first period, 38-44. So by 6. But they outscore their opponents by 2 and 10 in the second and third period. The Preds' winning goal is most likely in the second period and the opponents in the third. That switches on the road, interestingly enough. The opponents in the second and the Preds in the third, but the Preds got the winning goal in the second period last night. That's why this is proclivity and not prognostication. At home, the Preds are 23-16-2. 23-16-2 this season at home. And since the February 16th, they're 9-1-2. Now, so the Canucks are 23-14-4 on the road. So very similar. Preds 23-16-2, Canucks 23-14-4. Same number of wins. The Preds have 2 more losses, but the Canucks have 2 more overtime losses. So very similar records between the Predators at home and the Canucks on the road. Again, since February 16th, the Preds are 9-1-2 at home. All right, so scoring. The percentage this season that the Preds will tie each period is 37, 37, and 27 for 1, 2, and 3. So this season, 37% of the time, the Preds have tied the first period and the Preds have tied the second period. 27% the third. It makes sense the third period would go down, less ties. Teams are struggling. They're trying to win the game, and so either the other team gets the empty netter or takes advantage of the fact that they're being over-aggressive, or their over-aggressiveness causes them to score. So it makes sense that the ties in the third period would be lower. In looking at scoring, other than ties, in the first period, the highest percentage is for the Preds to outscore the opponents by 1. 29% of this season at home, they would outscore by 1. So 29 outscore by 1, 37 outscore by 2. That's a fairly good percentage. It's interesting to see that they are outscored so much in the first period when they have such a propensity for either tying or outscoring. Now, in the second period, it switches. Okay, there we go. My second period strife. The second period, it switches, and that the highest percentage is for the opponents to outscore the Preds by 1, 27%. 27% this season, the opponents outscore by 1, 7% by 2. So 34% of the time this season, the opponents outscored the Preds by 1 or 2 in the second period. You add that to the 37% for a tie, the Preds 29% for 1 or 2, but that's it. There's no other scoring. It's either 1-2 for the Preds or 1-2 for the opponents. But 29% the Preds get 1 or 2, 34% the opponents get 1 or 2. It's a little bit of a coin flip. And then 37%, the highest percentage being a tie. Now we get to the third period, and the percentages all kind of decrease for all the different potentials. However, the Preds, it's 17% for the Preds to outscore by 1 and 17% for them to outscore by 2. So that's a third of the time they'll outscore the opponents by either 1 or 2. 27% again is the tie. Then if they outscore by 3 and 4, it's 7% and 2%. So another 9% in there for the Preds. The opponents, interesting, for them to outscore the Preds by 1, 2, or 3 are each 10%. So 10% of the time this season in the third period, the opponents outscore the Preds by 1, by 2, or by 3. So 30% they'll outscore them 1, 2, or 3. 34, quick math, 34, 41, 43% of the time, the Preds will outscore by 1, 2, 3, or 4, and then 27% for a tie. Odds, the percentages look really good for the Preds at home. Again, they're being outscored by 6 in the first period, so go figure that. The second period, they really need to play better. So that's kind of where we're looking at. And, of course, the other stat that caused me to start this podcast, the first goal. If the Preds get the first goal at home, they are 16-5-2. The opponents are 7-11. So, a 3-1 advantage if the Preds get the first goal, and 7-11, 7-11. I mean, yeah, that's 60% for the opponents, 40 for the Preds. But hey, 40 for the Preds versus 3-1, right? And 18 times the opponents get the first goal. 23 times the Preds do. But it's not 16-0-0. But you got to play the game. Preds played really well the other night. Looking forward to this game on Friday. Was not looking forward to them coming in 0-2. Winning one against your opponent in the first round of the playoffs is really good, especially when you're going up against a division winner. So coming out of Vancouver 1-1 for a wild card team, coming out of the first two games 1-1 is excellent. You can say what you want about how they played in the first game. They're coming out of Vancouver 1-1. That is what the best you could expect. Okay, you could win two, but you're not going to expect to win two. Vancouver won their division for a reason. Now, we do call them the Vancouver diving team because when the Sedin twins were playing there, talk about a team that could just draw a penalty. Oh, my gosh. So many unsportsmanlike penalties should have been called against them, were not. If you didn't catch the first part of this podcast, I do not like Vancouver. I'm not a huge fan of the overall fan base. As I've said in other telecasts since I lived in Seattle, there are a lot of Vancouver fans there, and they aren't like that at all. But the ones that we have run into in the stadium, either in LA or in Vancouver, are a different type of fan. Don't like Vancouver. A lot of teams that I want to like them. I mean, they wear blue and green, for goodness sakes. Nice colors, kind of a stupid hockey stick logo on their alternate jerseys. But I just can't. I mean, there's a lot of teams that I like. I just don't want to play them. Really respect them. It comes to San Jose, my wife and I have slightly different. She absolutely hates San Jose. She hates Anaheim. I still have my Mighty Ducks jersey. I don't wear it. I haven't gotten rid of it like I did my San Jose mock turtleneck. I appreciate the teams for being good teams and being competitive, and the players that are on there. And I just don't have any of that goodwill feelings towards anybody that has ever played. And that's not true. I can't say that because some ex-Kings have rotated through Vancouver, and it always hurts my heart when they do that. They're playing their game. They're doing their thing. I still don't have to like Vancouver when they have a player playing for them that I like. That's how bad it is. That's how much I do not like Vancouver. So I'm glad to see we got a win. Again, Predators proclivity, not Preston's proclivities. Whatever. So my wife is kind of jonesing to get on the telecast at some point, trying to figure out how to work her into this. I'm sure you guys would probably rather listen to her than to me. Drone on. We're going to try to figure that out. We did talk about the last night at dinner. We were talking about the investigation I've been doing on the NHL awards, and so in order to make it a fair comparison and make it make sense, I did some research on the NHL and so what year would it make sense, and so I was kind of going through the history, what happened prior to 1917, is it 1893, 1893, and you know what the Stanley Cup was originally, and you know, and the Seattle Metropolitans being the first team in the United States to win the Stanley Cup. Kind of going through all of that history, and I wasn't going to do that on the telecast, and she said, no, you should have an NHL history show. So I'm going to do that. That's going to be next. I'm still working on it. It's going to be long, but it's going to be kind of a little bit of a history. It's going to explain why, and giving something away, why I start with the 91-92 year when I do my comparisons on the awards, and that will explain that. And so what I really wanted to do is make sure that the people listening, when I do the analysis, and if I'm wrong, if I'm still doing the analysis, still looking at things, right now it looks like it's an Atlantic Division bias, just giving a little things away. Just some of the analysis I was doing yesterday with, trying to look to see, who's, the wins Stanley Cups, and then the, highest point scorers and the highest goal scorers, and relating that back to other awards. And it kind of looks like the Metropolitan Division is getting screwed royally, and especially the Caps, which is amazing. And I thought it wouldn't. I thought the Penguins too, because I think the press seems to love Sidney Crosby, but it may look like it's starting to look like maybe the Penguins don't get the respect they deserve either. And the Caps, it's just amazing because Ovechkin was supposed to be like the second coming, and I know he's won a ton of awards, but it looks like they might be one of the teams also not getting the respect they deserve. So that's a little bit of a preview, but doing all this analysis and understanding why I'm starting and how I'm looking at it. So I'll go through that in the upcoming NHL history broadcast. And so that'll be good, because in order to explain all that, I felt like that was going to take half an hour or longer, and then start talking about the awards bias, whatever there might be, if I figure it out. But at least I'll know. And I've got these massive spreadsheets with all these graphs and numbers, and going through that yesterday. It really, I'm such a data geek, I guess. It's so interesting to see these numbers and how they work themselves out. For instance, okay, we'll go into that again later. This is Predators Proclivity. The Predators won last night, 4-1 in Vancouver against the Canucks, who play in Vancouver. Nobody else does. It's a home team in the NHL anyway, and they are going to be playing Game 3 here in Nashville on Friday night. I think it's a 7:30 start. 7:30. Sunday's game is at 5. I don't know about that one. We're supposed to play golf in the morning, and I don't really want to go play golf and then run home, take a shower, and run to the Preds game. But, such is the vagaries of life, right? What a rough life. Gee, Preston, gosh, you got to play golf and then go to a Preds game, huh? Whew, boy, rough life. Hey, it's Sunday. But Friday night, Game 3, Predators versus the Vancouver Canucks. Here in Nashville, the series is tied at 1-1. Yes, go Preds. That's great. I'm very excited, very happy. We watched half the game and couldn't stay up anymore. I kept waking up in the middle of the night, and I checked the scores. So very happy to see that they won, and looking forward to a win here in Nashville on Friday night. Thanks for listening. I'm Preston Proctor, and you've been listening to Predators Proclivity.